Hi guys. Um, Welcome to the Bridge Podcast. Today we're going to be talking to Dr. Tina Taylor about increasing autism awareness through children's literature.
Hi, I'm Dr. Tina Taylor from Brigham Young University, currently working as a Fulbright scholar at Mahidol University at the National Institute for Child and Family Development.
What is your background in the field of autism? How did you get to doing stuff related to autism?
Actually, let me just start back. I started interacting with people with autism when I was a young child. I had some friends who had what we didn't know was autism back then, or some friends with intellectual disabilities. And my heart just felt like it belonged with those friends. And so that kind of got me started. And my mother was really good to people who were on the fringes, people who were not really accepted by others or who struggled in different ways. So I learned from my mom really to have to learn how to develop relationships with those who were different from me. And then when I went to college, I took an intro to special education course, and I fell in love with those little kiddos with Down syndrome, intellectual disabilities, and other disabilities. And so that really got me started. So I decided to choose that as my major, elementary education and special education. And then I became a teacher, and I taught for about 9 or 10 years kids with autism and other disabilities that were affecting them pretty significantly. I went on to earn my master's degree in early childhood special education, and then got my doctoral degree in educational administration and specialized educational development. After that, I taught at the university. I taught for 1 year at Illinois State University, teaching teachers how to work with kids with special needs. And then I have been teaching at Brigham Young University for the last 28, 29 years or so.
Wow, oh my God, that's a long time.
It is a long time, and it's been a great time.
How do you get into literature specifically, like literature for children with disabilities?
Yeah, it's a really good question. My first job was at a place called the Children's Behavior Therapy Unit in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I was teaching preschool children with autism. And my mother, as a gift for me for getting my first job out of college, she gave me a book about a boy with autism. It was a children's book, and I'd never seen a children's book that had a character with autism in it. And when I read that book, it made my heart sad because this boy was relatively high functioning. He seemed to be pretty bright and could do quite a few things compared to the students that I was teaching who really, really struggled in life. But the boy in the book had to go to a residential school far from his home, and he had to be away from his family for a long time until the summer, like for about 8 or 9 months. And I thought, that doesn't seem right. He should be able to go to school with the neighborhood kids. Why can't the neighborhood school bring him in? And in those days, this is in the 80s, so 40 years ago, there weren't many schools, there weren't many services, there was not the knowledge about autism that we have today. So I made a personal effort to learn more about children's literature and how to find and select good literature to use for families raising kids with autism as well as for their peers, so they can learn what is it like to have a classmate who has autism or another type of a neurodivergent way of being.
So, sorry, out of curiosity, was it because of the misrepresentation of ASD in the books itself, or was it, I guess, the lack of acceptance of children with autism that led you to pursuing this field?
Well, the misrepresentation, that first book that I read, they didn't really misrepresent the child with autism. He was portrayed pretty accurately in terms of all of the kids that I had known who had autism. But what I didn't like was that he couldn't have friends who were not neurodivergent. He couldn't have typically developing friends except for a few months in the summer. So I wanted to see inclusion and belonging, a little bit more equity. Even back then, before DEI was a big thing, that's what kind of hurt my heart. And then the other part was there weren't many books. So I've been working on this as a field of study since about 1998 or so.
I know that this question kind of deviates from the main topic a bit, but like, so considering how you talked about like children in the child in the book having to be sent to kind of this school, was there a lot of like the influence of like this notion of the refrigerator parent going on to the 80s, or was that already did that already die down?
I'm glad you mentioned that. That's Bruno Bettelheim's theory that moms were cold refrigerator mothers, right? Um, the 80s, that was starting to die down a little bit, but not a lot. The book didn't really say anything about mom or dad being refrigerators. But it was more about there were no services. And that's the hard part, is when you know a kid needs services and the kid can't get those services, or they're too far away to be able to be cared for by the family.
So simply understanding would not be enough. It is about having services that tailor to these understandings, that recognize these understandings too. I see.
100%. Hmm. Yeah.
I was curious because I've been reading a book about like the history of kind of autism diagnosis, autism like understandings of autism. I think you talked about this a tiny bit, but like why is this field of literature that includes like children with autism important for um, people with autism themselves, their families, and their peers?
Well, for people with autism themselves, think about the books that you like. Let me ask you, Oat, do you have a favorite book from when you were a child?
The first thing that comes to mind is Harry Potter,
Oh,
but I cannot remember much more. But I kind of understand your point. Like, I agree that there's lack of representation of like Asian characters in books, and I would have loved to see something more of that. And so, I guess having someone who represents yourself is an important facet of it, right? Or would you agree, or would you think something else is more important within these books? Is it more about promoting understanding, or
yeah. So there's a quote that's well, I can't directly quote it, but there's a concept of there being mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors in children's literature. Mirrors are when you read a book and you see yourself in that book. So when you read Harry Potter, maybe you thought, I'm more like Harry than I am like Ron.
I see.
Um, so you like to see yourself in a character. Um, and yeah, you're right. Who was the Asian character? The gal. There was like one Asian character. And okay, so there's one Asian character. Maybe you identified with her more. So those are like mirrors. I see myself in that character. With back in the 80s, 90s, there weren't many characters that had autism in books. So if a kid with autism wanted to read a book about someone kind of like themselves in that way, it was very hard to find. And in particular, if you were Asian, it's even harder. An Asian child with autism, hard to find in any children's books. So that's the mirror concept. The window concept is you read a book and it's a window to a different world. Harry Potter is a different world that, say a child is in a wheelchair and they imagine flying, being able to move through flying on a broomstick, on a
I see.
Limbus 2000. And so they can do that through that window of the Harry Potter story.
Like promoting
And then,
understanding, right?
yeah, creativity, imagination. And then the third one is the sliding glass door, where you as the reader can walk through that door and be in a different world, understand someone else. So that's like for peers of kids with disabilities. If they read a book about a child, like say this one's Down syndrome, My Friend with Isabel. This book is about two friends, and Isabel has Down syndrome and Charlie doesn't, and they just learn to get along. So this is a sliding glass door where Charlie gets to understand, sorry, I'm doing this wrong, gets to understand a little bit more about his friend Isabel. That's the sliding glass door concept. Yeah, I don't have a disability. I don't have anyone in my family with a disability, but I could read this book and understand that it's okay to have friends who are different in some ways than I am. So
That's very
that's
cool.
one example of the
So it's sliding glass
sliding glass.
door,
Yeah,
window, and then mirror, right? Those are three
right.
types.
Mhm.
Okay, that is pretty cool. So I have never looked into education or like especially like children's like, education myself, and so this is like really interesting. I never knew that. Now I never knew it would be this interesting.
It is interesting. I love it.
Where can we find books that include characters with autism?
That's really an interesting question because I've tried to find some books in Thailand. You can find a lot of books on Amazon, but here in Thailand, I've been trying to find books that are in Thai. And I've only found one book, and it's called Autistic Ku Arai. What is Autism? Vitamin van der Laan. So it's a little book. It's pretty didactic, meaning it's not really much of a story. It's more really just teaching about what autism is, and it's for early learners, probably ages 5 through 8 or so. So that's the only book I found that really kind of explicitly tells what is autism, and that is available on Amazon. That's where I found it. And then I found some other books.
Are you trying to find like character one books with characters with autism, or is it just books about autism in general?
No, children's books, like picture books for young children.
That's gonna be hard.
It is hard, and it's a call that I'm giving to the nation of Thailand to be interested in this subject, because what we do when we have little children, we sit them down in our laps and we read books to them. And if we read books only about the mirror, people who are like themselves, that's all they will see. We need books that show the window into other worlds, the world of neurodiversity. And then we need to eventually get those sliding glass doors so they could be together. Okay, so let me just share with you one other set of books that comes from the Thai Media Fund, and those are books about siblings of children with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, intellectual disabilities, and autism. So far, they have six books that have been made available. They're all electronic books, so they're easy to access and they're free. And they're available on the Thai Media Fund's website. And they're all about what's it like to be a sibling of someone with autism, and some of the challenges and some of the joys. So those are some other books I found that are in Thai. Actually, both of these I think are dual language books, so Thai and English.
That's really cool. I have never like living here for how many years? How many years have I lived in Thailand? Wait, 15 years. 15 years. I've lived in Thailand for 15 years. I don't think I've ever seen a book about autism at all. Like at least a picture book. I have seen like big information heavy textbooks I think like my mom has read through, but beyond that it's very very rare. And I think it's especially concerning, considering how many like with autism are in Thailand, and how I guess it reflects like Thailand's under resourced nature in a sense.
But, parents can also, even though there are not many books here in Thailand, like just maybe 3 that I could find, they can get books from Amazon that are in English, and if they've got English language skills or know someone who has English skills, they can get those translated. So, and actually the Children's Foundation is also, we're working with them to get some books with copyright to be able to translate those books and have them available in Thai.
That's very cool. Uh, so how do you use these books though? Like once you get them, once you know like these books are good, how do you use these books in therapy, in schools, and at homes? Like how should they be used in your opinion?
Really excellent question. So let me show you one book. It's not about autism, but it's in Thai. The boy with flowers in his hair. This is a book that I've been using at the National Institute for Child and Family Development. We're using this book with kids who are typically developing to learn that there are kids who are different from me, but I can be a friend. It doesn't matter if they've got flowers in their hair or somehow else that they might be different from me, but I can be a friend. This is another example of that type of a book. This is The Invisible Boy. And The Invisible Boy is about a kid who just really seems invisible. No one's accepting him. So these kind of books are really good to show acceptance, not just awareness, not just that I know someone else is kind of different from me in some ways, but that I can accept them and make them so they are not invisible. They are present. They are part of our community, part of our classroom. So I do it like that. I with these books, like my friend Isabel, we've done that book here too, showing it's okay to be different.
I see. Like beyond, I feel like this focuses mostly at how can at like kids who do not have like ASD themselves, how does it help kids who do have ASD themselves? Like I think you talked a bit about like serving as a mirror, but can you like elaborate on it?
Sometimes a kid will see a book like this and feel like that's me, that's my experience. Particularly the kids who understand themselves more, have some insight into themselves. And so sometimes these books give strategies. So for example, this is A Little Spot of Worry. And this series of books by Diane Alber, it's a huge series. There are maybe 8 or more books. Yeah, here we go. Here's a few of the books. So, A Spot of Anger, Anxiety, Sadness, A Peaceful Spot. So, lots of different emotions. These kind of books teach kids with autism or other difficulties what they can do when they feel worried. And so it gives strategies when they feel anxious or concerned about something. And then there are these um, little worry spots. I know, aren't these cute? So they can say, I feel worried. I know. Yes. So I've been using these. And if
Oh,
they feel worried, then they can if they don't have speech, they can show that they feel worried. This one is
oh.
about belonging. And this one is orange saying, I feel like I belong. Ah, here we go. I
So it's
belong.
like a tool to help communicate as well. Wow, that's
Yes.
really cool.
Yeah. So we use
I have
colors a lot for people with autism. So the books facilitate that because it gives us something for joint attention. So mom and child, or teacher and child, or friend and child can say, yeah, you belong here because you're sitting here with me in class together.
wow, that is really cool. So beyond beyond children's books, I guess, are there any other types of books that you think are helpful for people with autism, for I guess the community at large?
Yeah, there are a lot of self-help types of books. So books that give you insight, and then there are a lot of books that are on strategies. So the beautiful thing about how broad the spectrum is with autism is there are now so many authors of books about autism who are written by people with ASD. So they can really share their insights. I mean, one of the first ones really was by Temple Grandin, her first book, Thinking in Pictures. And then Donna Williams wrote probably the next book. So those are for more mature audiences, beyond the children's literature. So it has a huge spectrum. There are thousands and thousands of books now that in English that people can choose from, to learn
I
from, to feel from, to understand.
I gotta I'm gonna note some books down. Temple Grandin, right?
It's called Thinking in Pictures. So if you've seen the movie, I like reading the books before. So of course, I read the book back in 1988 or so, whenever it came out, then saw the movie, and I'm like, wow, that the movie was really quite well done compared to what she had written in the book. The first half talks a lot about her growing up, and then the last half is more about animal husbandry, which is her area of study. So that wasn't as appealing to me, but she loved it and loves it.
Okay, that is really cool. I guess, do you have anything else to share? I've exhausted my list of questions and beyond.
Sure, I've got two resources that I'd like to share. One is the IRIS Center. The IRIS Center is a center out of Vanderbilt University. And my colleague, Marianne Prater, has curated a list of books of kids with disabilities, children's books. So anywhere from picture books to chapter books, like novels, about kids with all types of disabilities. So that's a really nice resource if you're looking for just beyond autism spectrum disorders. And then the other resource is the Dolly Gray Children's Literature Award. And that's something that Dr. Prater and I established with Sharon Kramer from Buffalo State University in the year 2000. We've been giving an award. It's an international award for books written in English that have the best characterization of children with autism or developmental disabilities. And so that website has a really good list of children's books with kids with autism.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah, thank you so much for volunteering to be on the podcast. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. It's been delightful to talk to you, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that your viewers or listeners might have.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning into Bridge Podcast today. As usual, please like, share, subscribe, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you.